Okay, guys, we are back. I have no idea what happened, but we have fixed it in a way that will certainly make sure that Vivian and I are not talking at the same time. So let me start that again, guys. Hello, 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 and welcome to Community Conversations with Councilwoman Tameika Isaac Devine. I'm Tameika Isaac Devine, and thank y'all for joining us this evening. This week is what I'm calling my Community Activism Week. And this is where I am bringing you, introducing you guys to folks who are doing amazing things in the community. Folks who, from a labor of love, are working every day in our community to make sure that the needs in our community are met. And we know that we have so many, and so not everybody can do everything, but all of us can do something. And so these are people who are doing things out of just their heart and their mind and their soul and their spirit to make things better. And yesterday or Monday, I had Perry Bradley with Building Better Communities. And if you guys did not see that episode, please go back on my page and watch that, because Perry is amazing. But tonight I have just an equally amazing person, someone that I have come to adore dearly. And we haven't even known each other that long, but I'm so not just inspired, but motivated by her passion and her spirit. And I know that if you don't know her, you will be too by the end of this episode. And so it is indeed my honor and privilege to introduce you guys to Vivian Anderson, the founder and the CEO of Every Black Girl. So welcome, Vivian. So Vivian, good. So I was gonna say, so Vivian, so what we decided to do, so we don't get the feedback, Vivian's gonna talk, I'm gonna mute, and we're gonna go back and forth on that. So first of all, Vivian, I want to just start, if you would just go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody, for those folks who don't know you, because by talking to you, people can kind of probably tell that you're not from Columbia, South Carolina. So introduce yourself to everybody. And then my first question to you is, I think your story is so inspiring, and we'll get into Every Black Girl and what you guys do and how you started that. But Every Black Girl is not your first foray into activism. So I want you to introduce yourself and talk about, how did you get into civic engagement, activism, and community organizing?
Hello, everyone. As Tameika said, I'm Vivian Anderson, founder and executive director of Every Black Girl, Inc. How did I get into community activism and organizing? Recently, somebody asked me that question for all these different things you have to write for. And I didn't realize, I guess I really got into it when I was like 5 or 6 and I wanted to play PB football. And they told me I couldn't because I was a girl. And I was like, okay, but I have watched my mother so I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And my mom, in Detroit, there's this thing called Coney Island, which is like a diner, but it's just like a Greek style Coney Island, Greek style diner. So we have the Coney Island on every corner, a gas station on every corner, most likely some type of liquor store. And my mother, in our neighborhood, she went around and she was getting people to sign this petition so we could get the church built. And I saw her doing that, and I think I was like, well, I want something, so I'm gonna get a petition. And I had went around and like had everybody sign this petition that I should be able to play pee-wee football, and I don't have to just do cheerleading. I was good at football, and I should be able to do it. Everybody signed. It was such a success, and they were like, yes, you can play. Until my mother said, you still not playing. Right? And so, but as I got older, I think I was doing things and I didn't know then. What we do now is we put a title to everything. I didn't realize a lot of the work and a lot of stuff that I've been doing for years was always community organizing or activism. But to put it more concretely, before I moved here, I moved here from New York, and I was a part of Black Lives Matter New York City, part of the Ferguson Ride. I used to work for the YMCA of Manhattan, and I was doing a lot of community development around food and justice, because in certain parts of the communities in New York City, we had the food deserts and obesity happen at the same time. It's like, okay, what's going on? And like getting more grocery stores put in, making sure that we were removing a lot of the fast food restaurants kind of thing, where it's just like, so folks can have equitable and affordable access to healthy food. And so I think that's really what, during these last few years working at the Y, and then my work with Black Lives Matter, and then the work that I was doing for an organization called Girls for Gender Equity, really like propelled me to, it really did take a large part of how I ended up here in South Carolina.
So that brings us to where you are now. So, you know, and most people are like, okay, so you were in New York. What brought you to South Carolina? And I know the story. I'm not gonna kind of preface it. I'm gonna let you tell it yourself. But um, your passion for working in the community and advocacy and activism and equitable communities for young women, especially Black girls, led you, as some people would probably say, anointed you to come to the Midlands area. So tell us what happened, and what made you come to Columbia, and what made you start Every Black Girl.
So, as I said, I was living in New York. I was living in Brooklyn, New York. I was working for an organization called Girls for Gender Equity, and I was doing a lot of work with the girls around push out. And we'll talk more about push out, I'm sure. So, I was doing work around push out, and I'm working with these girls. In October 26, 2015, a video comes out, goes viral from South Carolina, about a Black girl who's assaulted in the classroom by a white school resource officer. I could not, like, I saw it, and like the rest of the world, I could not sleep. And so I decided, like, I'm just gonna go let the girls know, because not only was she assaulted, but her and her classmate were arrested. And I was like, you know, I just want to go there, especially because at that time we were doing work with Eric Garner, Michael Brown. We were doing stuff around Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland. We were doing all these things because we saw all the harm that was happening to Black bodies. But when saw this Spring Valley and it went viral, I didn't see that same push where I'm like, oh, we're not getting on bus loads, we're not taking bus loads, and we're not going out there, you know, we're not going down in the south, like. And I was like, I literally just wanted to come and just hug the girls and let them know that they were loved and they were supported and whatever, you know. But when I got here, some of the reaction was a little different, like, oh, you know how Black girls are, you know what this is. And I was like, no, nothing deserves that. And long story short, I decided to, because I started doing healing circles, folks were, because that was traumatic, and people really were impacted by it and didn't have, you know, we're like, what do we do? How do we move this? And so, as I'm meeting more and more community folks, and I was coming back and forth because I was determined to meet those girls on my first trip, which was a 2-day trip. I didn't meet them. So for almost like 2 years, I'm traveling back and forth. Now I met them, but folks kept saying, when are you having a next event? When are you doing this? When you're doing that? And one of the biggest things that I learned was that I cannot do I will not be a drop-in activist. I'm not going to come in and do community work in a community I don't live in. And so I relocated to South Carolina because I wanted to make sure all the national work that I had been doing around gender and racial equity, the Southern Black girl's voice was elevated in that conversation. So yeah, so I was living in Brooklyn, saw what happened, wanted to see how I could support and like really make sure Black girls are being saved. So it had me relocate my life to South Carolina to do this work.
That is awesome. Oops.
And you said the word anointed. I often tell people I was being obedient because I remember laying on the couch and I was like, God, really? I'm supposed to go there? And I really feel like I was being obedient. So that's part of it too, where I felt like this was something that it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm about to go and do this. It was really like me and my conversations with God, like, okay, here's the next path. This is what I'm calling you to do. So often say I was being obedient.
Good. And for those of you who might be just joining us, welcome to Community Conversations. We're having a conversation tonight with Vivian Anderson, the founder and executive director of Every Black Girl Inc. And we're talking really about how she came to South Carolina and how she got started. So if you are just joining us, please click in the chat, say hello, let us know you're here. Also, if you have a question for Vivian or myself, please make sure you put that in the chat as well. But share this, invite your friends, and engage, and invite them to be engaged in this powerful conversation, because we're going to get into some different things, especially about supporting Black girls in our community. And I want to make sure that everybody who can hear this conversation hears it. And then, as always with Community Conversations, that you leave here tonight with some information that you can take action on, whether it is supporting this amazing organization, volunteering, getting your young girls involved, whatever it is. I want to make sure that you leave here with some action items. So with that said, Vivian, let me ask you this. You said something that I think is very telling, and you mentioned about how you didn't want to be a drop-in activist, and so you relocated. And I think a lot of people hearing that probably feels like, wow, that's just really dramatic. But for me, that says how passionate you were about this issue, and in your coming here, the needs that you saw, the unmet needs that you saw, that you felt that you could speak to. And so I think that's really powerful, because I don't know if a lot of people, no matter how important an issue it is to them, that they would actually relocate to a community to be involved. And so tell us, how was that? And be real. I would love to know how you feel like, sometimes this community, and this is where I'm born and raised. No, I wasn't born here, but almost born here. My daddy was born here. I was born while my parents, when they got married, I was born up the street in Charlotte. But anyway, but being here and being raised in the Midlands area, being raised in Columbia, we have an amazing community. But I do think it is a close-knit community that sometimes probably people don't feel like, I'm not from here, so I can't make a difference. And I hate that sometimes people feel that way, because everybody has a role. So tell us kind of how that was when you first started coming, and how you felt, how you felt like this was really a place that you could make home and really continue the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I think I often, like I said, one of the things is that there are so many times when we have a certain issue that needs to be addressed, and you have, like, we've seen all the protests, we've seen folks go in and then they leave out. And I even look at it like historically, when we look back at things, how you have all these people come and then they leave, and then you have this community who's like been given something and then it's not fair. But when I first got here, I'm going to be very honest, I was not welcomed. They were like, you ain't even from here. You people from up north think you can come here and give us like answers to this and that. And I was like, no, I'm actually not here to give answers. I want to know how I can best support. I really wanted to be a support. And because of the pushback, they was like, you came here because two girls got in trouble at school. And I was like, oh, did you not see what I saw? Did you not see this? And often say the Salt Spring Valley was like a Pandora's box, and it opened up so much that we often don't see. And so one of the things that I learned that first year, and like when I got here in 2015, that South Carolina, not anymore, but when I in 2015, third largest, they were third in the nation for domestic violence deaths, right? South Carolina was third in the nation for domestic violence deaths. When I start looking at how many kids were sent to juvenile detention for arrest, so that school to prison pipeline, that's the third largest arrest, the disturbing of schools law. So I learned about the disturbing of schools law. And so what made me, like I said, again, what made me stay is like, I need to be, I had to be front and center. Folks were like, whatever, you'll be gone like the rest of them. People pop in and out, and people come in, we had the Charleston, in Charleston, but you had the Charleston, now you had this, people came in and then they left and then they leave. and I just kept hearing left. And especially when it came to the girls, I started doing programming, and they're like, "When's the next one? When's the next one?" And the one thing I was committed to was not being a continual inconsistent in their life, right? And so there are many times people pop into young people's life and then they just pop out. And I refuse to be another inconsistent in another child's life. So that's what made me realize I can stay here, because after a while, folks were like, "Wait a minute, you still here? You still here? You still here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here. I'm doing it with you." And then oftentimes, like, so this is my analogy when I think about things. We can all welcome a president to, like, oh, he can stand for us or she can stand for us. Or Mayor Benjamin is not from here, but how we welcomed him and how everybody welcomes him and loves him. That's how I feel about activism, because I think every level of government should have activists, folks who believe in community and who want to see community change for the better. And then the last thing I'll say is, I have this saying, and I'm gonna say it until the wheels fall off. You shift the South, you shift the planet. And I believe it starts with South Carolina, because when we think about our historical context, the slave ships landed here, and it's been so much harm. It's been so much, right? And so I just really believe, like, if we're gonna shift this planet, it's gonna start with shifting the South.
So true. So tell us, let's talk about Every Black Girl. So for those folks who are not familiar with Every Black Girl Inc., what is Every Black Girl Inc. and what is your mission?
So Every Black Girl Inc., our mission is to create a world where every Black girl thrives. Now, it's our belief, in order for that to happen, everybody around her has to thrive. So that means we have to be working with everybody to ensure the thriving of Black girls. That's schools, that's DJJ, well, juvenile justice systems, that's foster care systems, that's community, that's home. So we work with everybody. We provide direct programming. We meet with the kids, and we also serve boys as well. So we do direct programming with young people, and we also do programming with adults. I think in our programming, we look to, like, build folks up so they can be advocates, not with Black girls for themselves, but others. What is advocacy? What does that look like? We really look at policy change. We've been able to take kids abroad, because I always want Black girls to know, no matter where they land on this planet, they belong. So they've been to South Africa, Antigua. They traveled throughout the states, joining other girls, not just Black girls, but other girls with understanding what does it mean to be a Black girl, and what is gender equity, and how do you achieve it. We've been part of representing the Southern Voice at the International Day of the Girl, which is going to happen on October 11th, virtually this year. So for the past 3 years, we've been taking girls to New York so they can participate in the International Day of the Girl at the United Nations. With our adult programming, we do a 3-day workshop that's called Legends. And it really is, here's your life, here's the life you dream about. What's that missing? What's that in between that's stopping you from living that life you dream about? And it's, no matter where you are in life, there's always somewhere else you want to go, or there's something that you've always wanted to do, but something has stopped you. So we really work with folks around that, because if they can break through with that, they can support young girls with their breakthrough. And then we do a 90-day leadership program, and it's like they set goals in 5 clear areas, which is friends and family, career and education, finance, community, and health and well-being. And it's like, if you were to author your life, if you could create the life that you dream about, what would it look like in those 90 days? So they set goals in those areas. They get individual coaches, and we support them through it. So that's what this shirt right now is, graduates of the program. And we've had CEOs from, like, yeah, and at the top, CEO of REN, Women's Rights and Empowerment Network. A lot of people remember Stephanie Cooper-Luter, who was the president. She was the executive director at Sisters of Charity. We had educators on the team. But it really is like, no matter where you are, where do you want to go? And then, like, giving folks the tools and resources to, like, move them to the next level in life. So those are the things that we're doing, that we have done. We do 2 conferences per year. One is in October, the State of Black Girls, what's really at stake. And we're looking at, because that would have been the anniversary of the assault at Spring Valley. And so what's happened locally, not statewide, then nationally. How has that changed? Has there been progress? Is there still more work to do? And then in March, during Women's History Month, we do turn the ships around. If our body, we teach you girls, if your body is a ship, what ship cannot land on your shores? So turn that ship around. So it's really to celebrate Black girls and then do more advocacy work. What ships don't get to land on your shore?
So, I mean, it's so extraordinary. I mean, I've been to the kickoff when y'all are about to go to the International Day of the Girl, and that's been amazing. I've been to a couple of your sessions, and so what I'm always impressed about is just the leadership of these young ladies, but also what you talked about, this the new horizons that you're opening for them. I mean, I've not been to South Africa. I mean, so there are so many things that people don't sometimes young people don't even make it out of their community. They don't even make it out their neighborhood. And these girls have had an opportunity to really get outside of South Carolina and not just lead within South Carolina, but get outside of it. How do you want to see this organization grow? What are some of the things that you like to have?
So the first thing that I would like to see happen is that, and we're still working on funding and raising money and like looking for ways to have this happen. So one of the things that I want to see is 50% of our decision-making body as like paid staff will be Black girls. If this organization is called Every Black Girl Inc., they should be decision makers and they get to be paid for their genius, right? So that's 50% of our decision-making body and our board will be Black girls. That's something I'm really working hard, because if I transition out, I really believe like a Black girl should be taking over. Let's see. Another thing that I want to see grow out of this, and we've already started, is that we're not relying on grants, but it's actually girls feeding back into the organization. So we just graduated 6 girls from what we called our summer. It's summer youth. It's our summer youth social entrepreneurship program. So 6 girls started their own businesses this summer. They did a 6-week program. They have LLCs. They have actually websites. They have line. They actually have like full products that you can order now. There's a couple of girls, their products you're gonna have to like wait, because it's like, I want to be an interior design and they can't do that now, or I want to have a doggy spot and they can't do that now. But yeah, so I really want to see it be something that's actually resourced and ran by Black girls. That's like and also want it to be my long term. I stopped saying I wanted to. I used to always say I want to like work myself out of a job. And I realized like I was only focusing on the things that's not working, but the organization will continue, not because it's a need, but because we are actually always there to keep making sure girls have this, so the need won't be there.
So I really want to talk about
As far
oops, go ahead.
So one of the biggest things is creating safe places, and having girls have the opportunity to experience girlhood, because we know oftentimes Black girls don't get to have girlhood. We say you should act, you should do this, you shouldn't giggle, you shouldn't do that, but have a place where they can just be. And so it really is like creating a space. So when I say removing the need, not a need for a place for girls to just be girls, but we're not having a high rates of sex trafficking with Black girls. We're not having the same level of sexual abuse with Black girls. We're not having the economic injustices we have with Black girls. All those things, that need is removed, but we still have spaces for Black girls to go and thrive.
Cool. So let me ask you this. Okay, so one of the events that I came to that you guys had was was the viewing of the movie Push Out, and you are in there. You're interviewed in that documentary. But can you explain? Because and I know I see Tiffany Tichy on. Hey, Tiffany. She says what. Let's see. She said, "What ships don't get to land on your shore?" She loves that. So, but hey, Tiffany and I talked about this as well. About and this is like pre-COVID. So COVID happened, and we were. I think she was planning a I guess a slumber party of girls to watch Push Out. But the documentary, and I don't want to try and paraphrase it, but the documentary is about the school to prison pipeline as it relates to Black girls or really I guess girls in general, and how they are pushed out of the system. But can you explain that for those folks who are not familiar with the system of push out? What is it, and what role are you with Every Black Girl playing in trying to address that phenomenon?
So, in a short context, push out is any interruption in a child's education that will lead them to leave school. So most of the time kids don't drop out, they're pushed out because there's a school system, there's something that's happening at school that has them not connect. And it's so many, like, so when we think about Black girls and is push, the documentary was Push Out, the criminalization of Black girls, all the things that are pushing young people out. And anytime, like, even with the resource, what happened with Shakara at Spring Valley, that's a form of push out because her school was interrupted, right? And she got arrested, she didn't have school. So we look at those things. We also look at what are the things that's happening in classrooms, what are the supports that young girls need in school, specifically Black girls, because Black girls are being at faster rates, not necessarily higher rates, but faster rates than most of their counterparts to be referred to like DJJ or pushed out of school. And it's because like we're like, oh, we got these rules, we have policies or dress codes where I can't wear a head wrap or I can't wear my braids, and all those things are anytime a child feels like they can't be their full selves, and then we're gonna like penalize them for being their full selves. Those are different forms of push out. So as far as my work and what I've been doing with it, is like really working with teachers, because I'm a strong believer that I don't think anybody goes through all those years of school to go to school and harm children. Sometimes we're bringing in our own biases, implicit, unconscious, whatever you want to call it. There are biases that come in. And I'm not just talking about white teachers against Black kids. I'm talking about even Black women against Black girls, because there are things, because there's a two-sided fold where it's like, yes, because we're Black and we're girls and we know the struggle, I have to go harder on you. So they don't receive the nurturing that other kids or the passes that other kids get. So it's really like to start explaining, to like support teachers and education systems, to really, or school environments all around, to understand like, here's what's showing up, here's the stats, and here's what we can do to like switch that narrative. Let's change it, and let's make sure that and push out, understand it's not linear. It's not like, oh, something happened at school, a child gets arrested, they drop out and they go to jail or anything like that. When we talk about the school to prison pipeline, there are so many things where once I graduate, I'm never going back to school, I'm never doing this, because of something that harmed them in school that was never addressed. So that's a lot of the work that I do. Like, let's start identifying it now. Let's see how we can support the entire system, change it. Like, let's really flip it. What does it mean to have transformative schools, restorative justice schools? What does it look like that we're going to like really look to support all children? Specifically, my work is centered around how do I help folks understand what are the things that are coming up against Black girls. And so we do a lot of policy work, we do a lot of advocacy in schools, things happen, and oftentimes our parents sometimes don't know, so we come in to support parents and advocating for their kids in school.
That's good. Latasha Tate says, agreed. She said, valid point for traditional school disciplines. And it is, it's really about education. And I think that one of the things for me as a policymaker, which, I'm not over the schools or anything, but what was powerful for me by seeing Push Out was, like you mentioned, there are so many things that come into play. Some are biases, some are lack of support for a family structure that young Black girls are coming up in. Some could be, just the other things that are challenging young girls as they are trying to do well in school. So there are a lot of things. There isn't just one thing. And so one of the things for me was watching it, thinking, okay, how do we change the system to the point where the school that is supposed to be supportive and be nurturing, and I know wants to be, but I think over the years the schools have been tasked with being so having to do so many other things that they weren't necessarily equipped to do, but have to do. How do we change kind of that system to recognize that if we're going to be addressing the whole child, addressing the whole child means, confronting some of these obstacles and barriers that may have presented themselves, some intentionally and some unintentionally. So, what are some of the things, I guess, from that work, the work that you're doing around that field? What are some of the things that you believe the community might not completely and fully grasp when it deals with, particularly with the work you're doing with Black girls? What contributes to that push out? What are some of the things that we're not aware of as community folks that we should be, and maybe some of the gaps and services that need to be provided?
Yeah, so this is probably going to be where it gets like the comments from like, well, I don't agree, which is great. Let's have the conversation. Well, one of the main things, one of the things that we're really doing is looking at police-free schools, the policing that happens over Black girls' bodies, Black girls in schools, the policing that happens in school from various levels, right? One of the there's Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She actually has legislation out right now that she's looking to get passed. It's called the End Push Out Act. And in it is like, what would it look like if for the resources, so just for instance, in Richland County, where sheriff's department is getting close to $50,000 per SRO. And the matchup with social workers or mental health workers is not the same. We know teachers that's not even getting 50,000, and so that money that we're using, how we are allocating our budget to look at the whole child, and like what are the like restorative justice? What does that look like? What is what does it mean if we start moving out punitive measures and say, oh, instead of looking at the behavior of the child, let's look at the root cause of the child. Like, what's the root cause of that behavior? And really looking at like, actually, we had a campaign like just see one Black girl, not her behavior, just see her. So even in community, you walking down the street, just say hi to a Black girl because it's like they're invisibilized. We really fight to like stop making Black girls so invisible and not their behavior. Sometimes we say, oh, we see them, but no, do you really see them? What's creating it? And that's some of the work that we do with teachers. So as far as community, look up the In Push Out Act and look at the ways to get involved. What are the ways to actually volunteer and mentor? I really believe in mentoring. What are the gifts and talents you have? Even when some people are always asking this question, what can we do? How can we get involved with every Black girl? What do you need? I'm like, what gifts and talents do you have that you want to share? Because I can come in and say, serve lunch or something, but that's not where your gifts and talent, and you might not even be happy with just serving lunch. But what are the gifts and talents you have? Because when you bring your passion to the table, these girls are going to pick it up. So looking at all the legislation, making sure like y'all, real talk, we about to know what is November, who's not just in the White House, but who's running locally really impacts what happens with children. We have school board elections coming up. We've had them coming up. Like really, even, like I don't have biological children, but I feel like every child, and I'm always going to quote a song. Destiny's Child is like, who am I to think, every child that I see, I have to claim as my own because we all live here. And so really looking at what changes you can make within schools without being involved in school. And that's like the vote, like, and yes, I've been talking about voting so much because November is right around the corner. So you're going to hear me keep talking about voting. But even voting for like who's on school board, if you have children, make sure you're voting for PTA. Like who's going to be your PTA president? Or PTA, PTO? I know they have different terms. And how are you? Like, what do you need? And make sure you're showing up and in the best way you can. Because I know sometimes parents will work. You're working all day, and then by the time you get home, a PTA meeting, you're not making it. But figure out a way to get involved. And I think most of the time, folks know the answer. I would say just act. That thought that comes into your head, say, I wonder if I. Yep, that's what you do. Just go do it. I hope that answered it.
No, that you did, because I always said that, figure out where your gifts and talents are. We all have our gifts and talents, and you've heard me say this several times over the course of the summer. But one of the things that got me over this year was there were so many people who had an opinion about how people were letting their voice be heard through the protests and everything else. And I always said, you gotta follow, the way you share your voice might be different. Someone might be protesting or marching. Someone else might be taking care of someone else's kids so they can protest and march. Someone may be the legislative part and working to try and affect policy. We all have our gifts and talents. And so we need to figure out what that is, because you're right, especially when you're talking about working with kids. Kids see what's genuine. And if you're there because, oh, I just want to volunteer, and even if it is genuine, but you're just doing something just to do it, and it's not something you like are passionate about, then that might not actually speak to that child like you really doing, teaching, dance, if that's your passion, or whatever else. So no, I solely get that. I did Google Ayanna Presley's In Push Out Act, and I put it in the chat. So if anybody, if you want to click on that to learn more about that, please do that, and put that on here. And then I'm also up here, hit the wrong thing. Then I'm also putting in the chat your website for every Black girl, because that is your website that tells a lot more about what you do, and it also donate is on there. So you're part of it could be supporting the efforts of what every Black girl does. So I put both of those in the chat. So if anybody has any questions for Vivian, please go ahead. We've got about 10 more minutes. So if you've got another question, let us go that. So let me ask this. When, you and I have talked about, we've talked about that voting, because that, that's where I'm passionate about too, because I do truly believe, from this week on, from voting and the census, those are the two things that people have heard me talk about. Oh, I didn't realize I lost the earring. Okay. That's all I've been talking about over this last week, is voting in the census, because it is so important that we do have our voices heard. We have to have the right people in office, people who care about these issues. And even if it's not an issue that they currently know about, they're open to hearing about it and listening to folks. But we also, the census, it brings resources within our community to support the things that we need. So with what you guys are doing, and then I'm going to let you kind of tell. I want you to talk a little bit about, like, how can people specifically learn. I put the website up there, but how can they learn more about the work that you're doing? But want to know as far as nationally, because you also, I mean, Every Black Girl right now, you've relocated here. Every Black Girl Inc. is headquartered here, but you still are very involved nationally with things are happening. And I guess one of the things, and I preface this by saying I'm not negating any of the other big national movements that have happened and things, because they are all so important. George Floyd woke up a nation like no other horrendous crime that has happened before, and that was not the first Black man that was killed at the hands of a police officer, but it did wake up a nation. So all of them are important, and they have things. But what I have noticed, because I know you, I have learned about other incidents nationally, through just knowing you, because you have been doing this work, and it doesn't seem like there has been a whole lot of attention, I guess, around some of the injustices that happen with Black women, particularly Black girls. And I think, of course, that's why Say Her Name started, Sandra Bland, and then, Breonna Taylor. And because it was about the fact that a lot of the Black men were getting more attention, and not to say they're not important, but we want to make sure that we fully grasp what is happening in this country. And right now, since we are talking about racial reconciliation and things that people can do, I think it's important to understand what's happening with Black women as well. And so, can you talk to us a little bit about just what do you see nationally and some of the things? I know you went, I think you were in, was it Detroit? You were in Detroit this a few weeks ago. There was an incident that happened there that I had not heard. I didn't see it on the news, and I heard it through you. But what are some of the things that are happening that so that we can be more aware of the things that are happening, the injustices that are still happening in this country right now as it relates to Black women and girls?
So, one of the things that, like I said, when I came here, it was because one of the things that I noticed is that when there's a death, we move so late. We move, but there's harm that happens that doesn't necessarily mean a physical death, but there's a part of a girl or woman that's killed in that moment. And when we look, um, we keep hearing about the black men, but like we said, like even Breonna Taylor, like we're still waiting. Like the family got the lawsuit. They're doing some changes now, but it's because a group of women decided to like we're gonna keep fighting, and it's one of those things where I think we've been trained and so accustomed, like we got to go stand for these men, we got to go stand for them. And it's like, no, we get to stand for Black women too. And if you go to the Say Her Name website, and it is Say Her Name, or the African American Policy Forum, they can give you a whole all the work that's being done nationwide. And the incident that you were referring to, it coincides with Push Out, because there was a 15-year-old girl who was detained at a juvenile detention center for not completing her online homework. Yes, is there backdrop? Yes, but it started that she had a conflict at home with her mom, and they had put her on probation because she was put on probation, and one of the probation violations was being schoolwork. But during online learning and a child with an IEP, all the ways that we criminalize Black children, because the research shows a lot of the stuff that's happening with Black girls and what they're being penalized for, their counterparts are doing the same thing. It's not that often say it's not that all girls don't do the same things. All girls don't get punished or getting the same treatment after that thing has been done. So I stayed with the national work because I still believe that it's so connected to here. Like whatever happens in any backyard, let's make sure it doesn't happen in this backyard. And so that's one of the things that I do, or I look for when I'm like, okay, even international work, right? What's happening internationally, it impacts our girls, right? Like, so how do we make sure? I believe if it's one of those things. You raise a daughter, you educate a daughter, you educate the nation, right? And so I'm really intentional about like how do we can't talk about pay equity for women and we're not starting with how do we make sure our girls can get to women so they can get that pay equity. So yeah, so that's I don't know. That's just my passion, right? Gender and racial justice, and making sure that we're not leaving folks out just because they don't leave this earth. It doesn't mean that those aren't still things, issues, and and you do not have to travel. Like that's another thing. You don't have. I'm not asking everybody to relocate their life. I'm really not. I'm saying like there's somebody on your block. I can guarantee it. I don't care what the house looks like. I don't care, two family, the income. There's still a girl looking to be seen. And even just starting with that girl on your block, that girl in your family, that girl, that cousin, you're like, oh, cousin such and such. You know how her kids are. Maybe you're the woman or you're the person that's going to step into that girl's life and say, you know what, I see you and I see the potential in you. So that's how I think.
All right. So before we go, and I put your website up here. Okay. But when you come back, also tell people how can they stay connected with you? How can they know your work? The website's on here, but how else can they stay connected and know the work that you guys are doing? Oh, and then how can, if they have a young girl that they think could benefit from being a part of Every Black Girl, how can they get their young ladies involved?
Yes, that's the question. So our website is being worked on. Unfortunately, the woman who created my website, a dear friend, she transitioned on Sunday. A young girl, she hadn't even hit 40. Brilliant, brilliant, beautiful Black woman. So that's under construction. So I would say actually go to our Instagram page, which is Every Black Girl, or our Facebook page, which is Every Black Girl, and you'll get more information and there. And folks who are like, oh, we want to contribute, we want to donate. I would say, because the donate button on the page doesn't work because it's being under construction, go to PayPal at Every Black Girl with the number 1 at gmail.com. That same PayPal email address is the best way to reach me directly. And if you contact me directly, I respond, right? Because I'm still like an organization of one, to be honest. And if you're interested in having our program, and I probably left this out, we work largely with middle to high school. And so I have girls who started with me and they were in the 6th grade, and now they're in the 10th, ninth and 10th grade, right? I had, so we follow you. We're going to keep following these girls. It's not like, oh, they come in and they're just gone. We've looked to really follow girls and look to support families all around. And so if you're interested in your child being a part of the program, and like I said, we work with boys as well. But if you're looking for your young person to be a part of the program, just email me. And we're going to start back. We're looking at how to, how we want us, because we did our summer program, and with the virtual learning, and they're on, they're virtual every day now, all day. We're really looking at some ways to like really engage them virtually. So we'll be starting back up programming in October. So yes, you have ample time. And the thing that's so great about the virtual learning or the virtual program is that the folks who come in, they're coming from all across the nation. These girls have met other adults who are like, yes, I'm a champion for you, and I'm giving you my gifts and talents. And they've come from like everywhere, like not just here in the, South Carolina, but nationally, then internationally. So we'll be meeting Saturdays for 2 hours. Our program usually runs Saturday from 12 to 2 virtually. And when COVID lifts, we'll be doing in-person meetings again. And that's on Saturdays from 10 to 4. So yeah, just totally reach out, and I would love to meet some amazing young girls, some new amazing girls.
Well, awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, that brings our time to an end. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I thank you so much. And I told you guys at the beginning, I like action items. So an action item could be as simple as going and liking their page on Facebook, following them on Instagram. I put the links up here, but also finding out more about how you can support the work of Every Black Girl. So I'm on, hold on, let me get.
I'm sorry, I got one thing, and this is a direct ask. One of the things we've been able during this time of COVID, the way we've shifted is really supporting families. So not only have we been able to support folks with rent, light bills, bills, and we've even unfortunately supported folks who are uninsured to make sure families who have been tested positive are taken care of, or families who've lost family. We've actually helped folks bury families. But right now, to support mothers and teachers who have to be at work, but they cannot leave their children at home. And it could be for any reason. Like sometimes the house is not safe, or it's just like the child is too young to be there. Because we're not trying to create a school. Let's be very clear about that. So I have 5 young people that I'm with from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily, because their parents have to sustain an income. So they come to the site to do virtual learning. And yes, we're practicing all the social distancing, doing it all apart. But if anybody wants to donate breakfast or lunch, please reach out to me, because we do need support, because we are stepping in where the school did, where the school can't right now. That was their place. So we are asking for donations, water, juices, breakfast and lunch, and pre-packaged, because we still want to practice safety. I've been reading my CDC and all the stuff around COVID. So that's something immediately that folks can do. Support us with making sure they're feeding. If you have books to help us, because we just got a building. Yay, Tameika, just got a building. We just got a building. And so I want to fill it with youthful things like books for all ages, anything that you want to contribute that way to help us build our center.
Awesome. Well, that's definitely action items. So y'all heard what they need. Vivian is very accessible, so reach out to her. So Vivian, I want to thank you for being my guest tonight. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your flexibility, guys. I mean, for you guys, I told Vivian we were supposed to do this at 7. Y'all know I usually do community conversations at 7. But I got a call about a call with the Biden Harris campaign to help get our next president and vice president elected. I'm biased. Yes, I'm very biased. That's who I'm supporting. And so I wanted to try and at least jump on there to see what I can continue to do to support them. So she was very flexible. So I thank you. But you guys, I'll be back tomorrow night at 7, and I'm going to be interviewing Cassie Alia with Serve and Connect. Cassie, I love her. She is also doing amazing things. Like I mentioned, this week, I have so many folks. There are so many folks in our community that are doing amazing work. I hope over the next few weeks, I bring you a lot of them. But this week, these were the top 3 that I thought about that I know are doing so much good in the community, and not everybody knows. So hopefully more people know, but more people will know about the great work that Vivian is doing if you share this and invite people to go back and watch the replay. So if anybody is watching a replay, go ahead and hashtag replay. Let me know you're doing it, but share it with folks so that they know how to support Vivian and what she's doing. And Vivian, not only do I want to thank you for your time tonight, but I want to thank you for your commitment to this community. You have come in here, and this is home for you. I mean, you might not have been here, but this is home because you've made it your home. And I appreciate everything that you're doing. So I love you. Thank you for what you're doing. For everybody watching, I love you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for getting informed. And so I'll see you tomorrow night at 7. So until next time, I'm Tameika Isaac Devine. Good night and God bless.